Welcome to the Soccer Curious Podcast, the beautiful game explained, and our continuing coverage for newbies of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. This is a hot take post-game episode following the U.S. men's loss to Turkiye in their last game of the group stage, 2-3. My name is Ben Falk. Joining me again to break it all down is soccer player, super fan, and my son, Benjamin Falk. Welcome, Ben.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Are you? Gosh. So let's start with that. Let's just start with your blink reaction to the game. It was a crazy game. So what did you think?
Off the top of my head, I would say, first half was okay, ups and downs. Second half, I thought the U.S. came out very strong, and then that last couple minutes was not great, and then at the end there really sucked, and that really put a bad taste in my mouth to leave with.
Yeah, and look, there's all this talk about, this game doesn't matter, of course, because the U.S. has already advanced, and they've advanced in the top seed, so what does it matter if they lose this game? And they obviously switched out basically almost everybody, except for McKennie started the game. Everyone else was new, so that was really cool and interesting, and maybe they were going to be great. And there's all this talk about whether or not if they lose, does it hurt your momentum? And I will tell you that it's a gut punch to lose in the last minute and a half of the game, last minute of the game. Oof. And people were booing. That will tell you right there everything you need to know about the American fan, right? Everyone's psyched and singing Country Roads, and then we give up a goal in the last minute, and the team gets to walk off the field to booze. So, not awesome.
Yeah. No, I thought that was quite the ending. I don't think it, was a measure of the whole game.
No,
but
it was not.
It definitely did not.
Certainly not.
Did not leave it at a good note. So.
All right, so let's talk about the U.S. lineup. So they played like a 4-2-3-1. So Matt Turner got the start this time over the other Matt. And then across the back, you had Austin Trusty, Miles Robinson, McKenzie, and Scally, with Scally and Trusty as the outside backs. I don't think that... I actually think Trusty played pretty well. I don't think he normally plays as an outside back, does he? I think he plays in a 3-back at Celtic. So anyway,
center back position.
Yeah, center back. So anyway, but he is a lefty. I think he played a pretty decent game, to be honest. I can't say the same thing for Robinson and McKenzie. They looked pretty lost back there. And then in the midfield, you had the double pivot of Weston McKennie and Sebastian Berhalter. I thought Berhalter was great in this game. And then you had Aronson, Reyna, Weah across the top there with Pepe as the striker. So we start with this goal in the first couple minutes. It's the second fastest goal in the history of the U.S. men's national team in the World Cup. It's a corner kick from Sebastian Berhalter, who's sort of really good at taking set pieces, and Trusty's on the back post and controls it beautifully and sends the ball in. And we score. So that was pretty awesome in the third minute. But then in the 10th minute, we give it right back by just like pulling the defense apart. How do you think the defense played in this game?
The defense is where most of the U.S. weaknesses in this game were.
Yeah.
I thought that there was a good amount of, mistakes, and I can't remember on exactly which goal, but there was definitely an instance where I could definitely see a mistake or two leading up directly to the goal.
Right.
And I actually thought that the defense was a little shaky, but that's what I thought was going to happen coming in. When we were not playing our starting 11, I thought that, our defense is probably going to be a bit weaker. But, I still thought that the team played quite well. And when the lineup came out, that's kind of what I expected. And I don't know. I was excited to have all the players get on the field, and I actually thought that a lot of people looked better than I expected them to. So I actually thought it was a good test of character. Obviously you want to get the win there, or at least a tie. You don't want to end with the loss.
Right.
And that really sucks, and that isn't great for morale. But, heading in as the first place team and playing someone like Bosnia, who is not as strong of a team, I think will be good moving forward. So overall, I think that the lineup in the game went well.
Yeah. So it gets tied 1-1, 31st minute. Guler plays this sort of, there's an overlap and they cut it back. A guy gets to the end line, and another goal gets scored by Turkey, sort of more or less a tap in. And so we're down 2-1 at the half. We then come back in the second half. Here are my notes that I made. Better for the U.S. at the end of the first half. They certainly kind of weathered the storm a little. After they gave up that second goal, it seems like they locked down a little better. I will say that I did feel like Tim Weah, who was out on the left-hand side there, he did not have a great game. Normally, I think of him as someone with a lot of pace who's going to burn that outside back. He could not get past Turkey's outside back. He coughed up a lot of balls. He was responsible for a lot of turnovers. And I love Tim Weah, but I was glad to see him come off the pitch. It wasn't his night.
Yeah, I agree. There was a couple times that he lost the ball and turned it over, and I was really like, wow, he does not look good.
He does
And
not
I
good.
really, going into the game, he was one of the players that I thought was actually going to be one of the highlights in the match, and who I was excited to see come off the bench, and who I was a little mystified as to why he hadn't played a little more in the first two games.
Right.
But then he did not show up, and he did not show why he should play,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, that was not good. My other notes: getting killed on the wings in transition, in particular. They were just rambling down those wings, both sides, and we didn't seem to have much of an answer for them. The defense felt out of sync to me, particularly McKenzie and Robinson in the middle. The problem with Robinson is that doesn't have any pace. So when he gets turned, it's over. And I
Yeah.
think that's responsible for at least one of those goals. Where is he? He's just completely out of position because he can't get back in time. I thought it was a good day for Ricardo Pepi. I think he did a lot to occupy those center backs. It's 3-1. They're playing 5 backs, so it's 3 center backs to occupy 1 striker. But he did a good job, I think, of making those runs. He made a ton of runs that I could just tell people were not finding him, except for Sebastian Berhalter, who really, I thought, put some really incisive balls through line-breaking passes. I didn't even think Gio did a lot of that either. I think Berhalter was one of the better players. But anyway, we come back in the second half, 49th minute, speaking of Berhalter, this absolutely lovely piece of skill where he just stays over the ball and bounces it into the turf and skips it right past the goalkeeper. Front post, just grazes past the post. It's a great score for 2-2. And now you feel like we're back in this game. Everyone's chanting USA, like the celebrity. Everyone's showing the celebrities. We're all smiling, like we've got this game in the bag. We were really pressing, and then we get Pulisic on the field. So then it feels like, we've got some momentum here. But I think everyone just started to get really tired.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that bringing Pulisic on did give it a little more energy that I thought might turn it around. But there was people who seemed like they were not used to playing as long, who seemed like they were not ready to play full games, and the energy died a little. And also, it did kind of feel like that the fans kind of, died out a little, and
They
it just
did.
kind of got a little slower,
Yeah. They
and
wanted
the
to
U.S.
see.
just didn't really seem to have a real threat going at
Yeah,
the
well,
end
look,
there.
people will argue this forever, but soccer is just not as much of an established sport as the other big sports in the United States, and fans are not particularly forgiving. So, so when you're
Yeah.
winning, everyone's psyched, and it's a great rowdy atmosphere, and when you're losing, it's like you're going to a funeral. So, I will be interested to see how the U.S. team bounces back from this. So standouts and people we needed more from. Who do you think was the man or men of the match in this game for the U.S.?
I would probably say Berhalter for having that goal, which was very nice and a good individual piece of skill. But also, I thought he played quite well.
Yeah.
I thought this game, I don't think there was anyone that I was over the moon about. Um, I think a lot of it was kind of, pretty good. Like a lot of like 60% completion passes kind of in there. But I would say Berhalter was good. I think Trusty did play a good game. He did have a mistake or two,
Yeah.
unfortunately, that I didn't love. But again, great piece of skill on that goal. So I would probably say Berhalter and Trusty, not just for their goals, but they also had pretty good performances. Um, and like you said earlier, I don't think he played amazing, but I thought Pepe played well. And I actually thought that he stretched the field pretty well and he was able to kind of get
Yeah,
in
looked
behind and make
dangerous.
some runs.
He looked
And
dangerous,
he,
and they
didn't
clearly,
didn't get his goal,
yeah,
but
yeah,
you know,
they had to
that
respect
happens.
what he was doing. Um, okay, I agree with those. By the way, I think Berhalter was probably for the U.S. sort of man of the match. There's a thing that always irritates me in soccer, which is you're chasing a win. In this case, you're tied 2-2, and there's 15 minutes left, and Berhalter was the one person there who's coming back, receiving the ball from defense, and pivoting and going, turning and going. And it
Hmm.
always annoys me when you don't do that. Let's get up the field. Let's get the ball to our best player, Christian Pulisic. And you could just tell that Berhalter had it in his mind in that last 15 minutes. I'm going to turn and go, turn and go, turn and go. I'm going to just keep feeding the ball to Pulisic. And chances are eventually he's going to get his chances, which he did, by the way. He didn't put them in, but he did get 3-4 quality chances, quality looks at the goal, and just didn't go in. So, but I would agree with that assessment. Who on the starting squad did you think you're sort of glad they're not a starter?
You know, I think that most of our back line, I think that Scally and Robinson in there, I think they did not. They looked pretty shaky.
Yeah,
I would actually think that both center backs and Scally, I think, they didn't play awful, but I do think that there was just a couple instances where I was happy that they're not starters, and I just didn't feel that confident when they were on the ball, especially in our own defensive third. So they didn't even necessarily play the worst games, but they feel shaky and they do not feel as strong or as sure-footed as a Chris Richards or Tim
yeah,
Ream or someone like
yeah,
that in the starting
yeah.
11.
And Freeman. Yeah, I mean, look, I completely agree with those. I would also add, I do feel like Tim Weah did not have a very good game. Uh, and it's
Hmm.
also, he just doesn't normally play over there. He's a player who doesn't want to go to his left. He wants to go to, he's a right footed player. So he wants to cut back into his right. I think the commentators were saying that too. And I was nodding the whole time. Like, yeah, him getting down to
Hmm.
the end line and cutting a cross back across the box, that's not a thing he's going to do. Obviously he's not Anthony Robinson and he's not Christian Pulisic, who does the same thing, goes from his left, cuts into his right. And Weah just was not effective out there at all. And in fact, they weren't even bothering to double team him because they just felt super comfortable that they had that locked down all day long. So that wasn't great. And yeah, I mean, you just see why Robinson and Scally and McKenzie are not considered in the for the important games because they're just not as good. And they were just a bit disorganized on the goals. And the last goal, I will honestly, we've just stopped watching the game. We're having this quick hot take. I have to go back and even look at the last goal to see how it all happened and who was at fault there and why the ball was bouncing around and could Turner have done better? I don't know. But like it's so deflating, unfortunately, to give up a goal at the death like that particularly to lose the game. It'd be different to tie it, but to lose the game is just blech. So, Potts report card. What do we think of the lineup choices and the subs and how do you think Pochettino did here?
When going into this game, people were, speculating if they were going to swap out a lot of the starters from the last two games, if they were going to make a lot of changes, if they weren't. And I hope that they would. I thought that the really clear path the whole time was to have really your subs come in and play that game and really kind of stick to it and get their boots on the ground, even if the game's not going well, even if it's close. etc. And I thought he did that well. And I thought the lineup that he came out with was exactly what I would have drawn up. I think that that was actually perfect because, look, yeah, we want to win the game. It would be cool to have the 9 points. It would break a record, but at the same time, it's I think much more important to have those guys get their feet on the ground. And I actually think that the biggest change in the game was obviously putting Pulisic in.
Yeah.
And I think that that wasn't the worst option because it does get him some playing time and get him up to game speed. We saw him lose the ball once or twice, so I think that's actually a good decision to get him a little, up to speed for the round of 32. So I think that Pochettino did very well in this game, actually. And they didn't end up winning it, and then at the end, that was pretty heartbreaking. But I think he did good. I think it was a good game from him.
Yeah, I would say so as well. I think it's probably a B. I think this is what everyone was expecting, is that he's going to switch out vast parts of the lineup just in order to, those four guys on yellow cards, keeping them off, obviously, at all costs, and, giving some other people some rest. Tim Ream is 38. He needs to probably benefits from the rest, and putting all the focus into now next week's game, because it has now been confirmed from today's play that it is Bosnia Herzegovina that will be playing the U.S. in the round of 32 a week from yesterday. So next Wednesday, I think, is that the first? Yeah, next Wednesday, which is July 1st. I agree. Poch was fine. I think the subs were good. It was great to see Pulisic come in. It was great to see Freeman come in, and try to instill a little more skill into the game than we really had. Tyler Adams, boy, was he missed. Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, Turkey, they're playing like a 5-4-1 sort of, right? So there's the midfield is so crowded with Turkish players. And so it became very tough for us to play through the middle, which is where they're inviting us to play. So, gosh, it was just it was a mess in there with a lot of balls bouncing around, a lot of possession given up, and I think Tyler Adams, that would have been a place where he would have excelled. Brendan Aronson. I really want to like Brendan Aronson. He's got pace, he's got some moves. He had 3 shots on goal that I just thought, oh, finally it's going to go in. Here we go. And that guy is got like the worst luck in the world. He cannot get a ball into the net.
Yeah, the big one in my head was the one where he got the rebound off the Pulisic shot.
I know.
And then he put it wide. And yeah, I would agree. Energizer Bunny, a lot of energy, a lot of pace, but he leaves a little to be desired.
Yeah, the final product, right? Like the shooting part of it.
Yeah.
The ball in the net part is a thing that has always bedeviled him on the U.S. men's national team in particular. He had a great season at Leeds. Great season. He's never been able to replicate that for the U.S. He just has never been able to do it. So, okay, moving on, and we can wrap this up. The vibe check for next week. This is a tough one because what are the vibes going to be? You won the group quite handily. You had this sort of garbage game but the one thing of a game like this is it can leave a sour taste in your mouth. And the one way that a sour taste can be left in your mouth is giving up the winning goal in the last minute of the game, which really sucks. So what's your sense of the vibes going into Bosnia-Herzegovina next week?
Yeah, that last minute goal does not help. But I think that the US team that won that first and that second game, when they were really on a roll in those games, I really think that Bosnia and Herzegovina will not really be able to slow that down.
Yeah.
The only thing I have to say is that they are a bigger team. They're very good at defending.
Yeah.
And they all score a lot from set pieces, which is going to be, it's just that's a hard thing to defend.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to crack. It's a hard thing to attack. So I think it will be a tougher game than the first or second game for the U.S. But I'm pretty optimistic about it. And I think that if the U.S. comes out and plays their game, they should do pretty well.
Yeah, I also think, I don't think the vibes for the next 24 hours are going to be great because I think a lot of people are going to be bummed that not just that they lost the game, but how they lost is going to have an impact on sort of the fan base for sure, and the pundits and the press and all that. So that won't be great. People will forget all of it probably by the time next Wednesday rolls around. This is an elimination game. It's a chance for the U.S. to advance to the next round. It's an opponent we should beat. I agree with you. Bosnia is a big, tough, gritty team. They don't score a lot of goals. If they win games, it's like 1-0. So they're not a big scoring team, but they are also a very stingy team. So they can be tough to score against. So I think your assessment is exactly right. So we'll see how they do. But all right, last thoughts on U.S. versus Turkiye at the 2026 World Cup.
An odd game that didn't actually matter in terms of points for either team, so I think that threw it off a bit. But personally, I'm just really happy that the U.S. is leaving the group stage in first. I think that's the biggest win you could have asked for.
Yeah,
and I think that's, kind of what I'm going to focus on as I look ahead to the round of 32 and watch the rest of the group stages finish up. But I don't think this game is a mark of, the U.S. starting to decline or anything. I really think that this game was not as important as the first two turned out to be. And I think that we should just look ahead and kind of put this one behind us.
Yeah, and I think we get to take some solace from the fact that the team that we put out there is not our first team. It's not.
Yeah.
So it had one player from our starting lineup start the game. So I think we can take a lot of solace from that idea that, it is being played strategically in order to get as far into the World Cup as we can. This was a stepping stone in that strategy. Would it have been great to have won or tied this game? It sure would have. Didn't happen. Lost it at the death, but the result doesn't matter. Turkey is still getting on a plane tomorrow and going home, and the U.S. gets to move on, lick their wounds. It looks like Austin Trusty got banged up pretty badly, but other than that, knock on wood, no big injuries. So that's really the big victory. Pulisic seemed fine. He looked quick. He looked dangerous. We need that for next week. So you know what? Turkey is now a piece of history, and now we look ahead to Bosnia-Herzegovina next week on July 1st. So there you go.
Yep.
All right. Well, that is it. That is our hot take post-game breakdown of the U.S.'s loss to Turkey, a 2-3 loss in the last game of the group stage of the 2026 World Cup. My thanks to Ben for joining me. He's on the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast. It's time for me to go to bed. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Tell your friends if you have a comment or question. We love those, so please email us at soccercuriouspodcast@gmail.com. See you next time.